We're in German Village today, a great neighborhood south of downtown Columbus. And we're going to visit a building that was built by the WPA, the Works Progress Administration. That was a federal program during the Depression, and it was intended to put people back to work. But it was a much bigger program than a lot of people realize. We're going to see one in Schiller Park here in the heart of German Village. And later on today, I think we'll visit some others and learn a lot about what the federal government was doing to try to keep people employed during a very difficult economic time. Hello, Doreen.
Hey, Jeff, how are you doing?
Oh, just fine, thanks.
Good
Thanks
to
for
see you.
coming out today.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. So we're exploring the world of the WPA today, I hear.
Yes, and I understand you know quite a bit about it. You've studied it. You know some of the landmarks around town. We're in front of the Caretaker's Cottage here in Schiller Park, which was one of the projects, but it was a really varied program, wasn't it?
It was incredibly varied. I mean, I don't think when people think about WPA, they think about the fact that it affected archaeology, it affected the fine arts, it was construction projects, it was parks, it was sewers. Even the basement of the Ohio State House had a refurbishing from its old stable days during this time.
There was a whole series of state guides, wasn't there?
Right.
Ohio
Very
has a
thick
guide.
state guides that told you what they were all doing. And in small towns, it was even more important, especially projects that were going to be federally funded anyway, like post offices.
Well, it created such a lasting legacy. So many things are still around. You see, like the post offices and the publications that may be out of print, but they're in libraries everywhere.
Right.
So it really was a far-reaching program.
It is. I think the sadness is in places like Columbus is that very few are marked, if any. And so you don't really get that sense of history. And yet it's so important, whereas in Chicago or New York, you might find more of it. In Columbus, we had such a diversified economy that it didn't really affect us as much in the larger structures as it would have in bigger cities. So the context of this sweet, beautiful little building really started to speak to the fact that as the second oldest park in Columbus, it needed a full-time caretaker who didn't have to come from somewhere else. This idea of working with parks didn't just mean this house was built. It could have meant that there were other things happening, landscaping around the Schiller Monument, sidewalks, brickways, things that may have since then actually disappeared a little bit more. Caretakers' cottages aren't usually used by caretakers anymore.
Well, this Caretaker's Cottage is a good example, but I understand there are other things WPA created in Columbus that aren't necessarily buildings.
That's for sure.
Well, let's go have a look.
All right, I'll follow you.
Doreen, I understand that somehow WPA was involved with City Hall, but it was built in the 1920s, so what's the story?
City Hall was built after the 1913 flood to face the river, which was to really be its front door and be very magnificent. But by the 1930s, the municipal offices were growing to the point where they really needed more space. So the WPA project that made this a whole building is the side we're going to be passing if we turn here on Broad Street. And that's become the new front door for City Hall, so that the orientation completely changed. Okay, we're turning down into Walhalla Drive from Indianola Avenue. We've been heading north between the University area and Clintonville. And this is one of the most interesting of the ravines, incidentally. It's one of three that were once referred to in the 1840s as the Three Gorges, as if they were, you know, spectacular out west Grand Canyon. And this one is truly wooded and lovely. The unsuspecting WPA project is one we're going to be passing under, which is the Calumet Bridge, which if you see from the top, just runs around North High School and looks very much like a nicely kept bridge. But when you see it from underneath, you really get the perspective, the height of it, and really the architectural magnificence of it.
Boy, that is spectacular. Well, Doreen, we've seen, let's see, a cottage, we have seen City Hall, we've seen a bridge. WPA really got around, I guess you'd say. What else is coming up? What else can we see here in the city?
Well, since we're traveling south on High Street and heading toward Ohio State, it's kind of a good reminder that a large part of the WPA projects really dealt with things that were not just post offices, but there was a great emphasis on education. And because Ohio State is a land grant college, WPA funds were used for needs that the universities had. So for instance, Ohio State wound up, and I think surprises people, still has the course called Scarlet. It's a 7-par golf course, and it was designed actually by a landscape architect in 1931, and it would only come in because it was marketable as both an athletic program and a recreational facility. And then there were other things, like for instance, Ohio Stadium, which was built, of course, in the 1920s. Honor dorms were created for students at Ohio State, but that was not unusual. They were in other land-grant colleges also. But there's a real treasure that's a WPA project that many people don't know exists, and that's what's coming up with the building on our right, Stillman Hall.
Well, let's go see. Oh my, this is marvelous. I'd heard about these, but I've never seen these murals. So tell me the story behind them. How did they get here?
Well, what's really interesting is during WPA, Stillman Hall was itself being built. He was the head of the department, and it was to be for the whole Department of Social Work.
Okay.
So the idea was that Burckhardt and Stillman really informed each other as to what they meant about the human condition. And if you think about it, in the Depression, people realized that poverty was not an individual choice of laziness or not working or not getting an education, but it was really forces that were beyond people's control, and that put them out of work. And there was nothing there that was to be a character flaw. So they took this idea that there's progress in the human condition. Burckhardt was really sort of taken with this idea of trying to show an evolution of how society responds. And so the murals that surround us were doing just that, and ending essentially in 1939 when it was completed.
So Emerson Burckhardt was a Columbus artist.
And what's interesting is he himself came out of a very rural background. His father was a farmer, his brother was still a farmer. And so this is sort of like, of Columbus artists, this is not the George Bellows story of someone born to the manor who perhaps more things in life than advantages than Burckhardt would. So he could transition between the urban and the rural in showing the human condition.
So what are some of what we're seeing here? I mean, there are all sorts of figures that are recognizable. I think I see Edgar Allan Poe, Ralph Waldo Emerson keeping an eye on him, Thoreau lurking in the background, I think, Henry David Thoreau, famous from that pre-Civil War period as a sort of rustic philosopher.
Well, I think that is interesting. Edgar Allan Poe is so prominent, but he is part of that whole New England group. They really represented the intelligentsia of America, but for their thoughtfulness, not necessarily for their wealth. And so in that sense, they're coming from a variety of circumstances themselves. And then you have somebody in here like Pasteur, who with, of course, medicine, again, is looking for the human good, the idea of vaccination and people, you know, we can lift ourselves up. What do you think of the Civil War one?
It's a little strange. It appears to be Lincoln with Grant and Lee. I don't know if they're signing a surrender form. I don't think Lincoln was there for the surrender because he was dead. It's a little odd, but it seems to be a message about, okay, let's heal the country after a terrible war.
And don't forget, if you're a land-grant university, you better put Lincoln in. Yes. And again, because it's public education, which is sometimes we forget. Public university.
That's right.
It was about agriculture and mechanical
Yes.
for Ohio State.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
And then we end in 1939 with the piece that's behind you right now, which is really like, it's a Columbus street scene with little messages.
Well, there are. There's one that says the Federal Reserve, and of course that came about in 1913, but that was what helped stop the panics and the depressions, 31, 32, 33. The depth of the depression, the Fed wasn't a lot of help, and we needed things like the WPA to help get out of it. But celebrating something as obscure to the everyday person as the Federal Reserve, Burckhardt said there was a place for that, control of the money supply, manipulating the money supply in a way that benefited the maximum number of people. It's interesting interpretations, and people could take, I suppose, a lot of different stories out of this room. Hey, thank you very much for taking me around. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so glad you came.
Where can people learn more about WPA?
Well, interestingly enough, online there is an entire program called Living New Deal, and people can submit things to it. that they know in their own hometown. Every state is connected in some way. You can type in Ohio, you can see a lot of the projects. A lot of them that, in fact, some that we've mentioned today are not even in the Living New Deal yet. And it is about the legacy of the New Deal and why it is still important today. So I think that is a really good source to start.
Well, I've learned so much. Thank you for the tour we've had today.